presenting to the emergency room with status epilepticus, a 15-minute seizure. Nurses used medicine to terminate his seizure, but 5 minutes later, JW starts seizing again. This didn't faze anyone because this is his second time presenting to the emergency room this month. JW was a dad. When his sons were young, he took them on a fishing trip. He told them he was gonna go get some bread and snacks for the fish, but he never came back. 12 years ago, JW started drinking every day. In the last few years, he had been admitted into the hospital 25 times for alcohol-related problems. He always told doctors about his boys and how excited he was to get better and be back in their lives. They're such good kids, he would say, but JW never got better. He always ended up back with his beer. About 2 months ago, medical staff leaving their shift from the emergency room would see JW on the street nearby, sitting on the floor, slumped over a pile of his own beer cans. No one could do anything about it. Day out, JW didn't drink to his heart's content. He drank to just feel normal. 50 beers daily was his only dietary intake for more than a month, which gives us some clues as to what's happening to him. The medical team was familiar with JW presenting to the emergency room, but this time, something's wrong. Alcohol is a nervous system depressant, meaning that it slows down all the processes of the brain. Seizure is all of the brain processes firing off at the same time, opposite the action of a depressant. You don't usually seize when you're drunk at 42 years old. JW is still breathing. It doesn't look like he's ingested anything else. Drunk JW is not the person presenting to this emergency room this time. Something else is happening to him. It's possible he could be suffering from alcohol withdrawal. Chronic misuse of alcohol builds dependence. This is a time when structures adapt to excess amount of ethanol. Areas of the brain that are supposed to insulate electrical signals are stimulated by the alcohol, meaning after repeat stimulation, more and more alcohol is needed to maintain the same level of inhibition. This is modulated by GABA, which is an important neurotransmitter, and excess ethanol reduces insensitivity to it. So, more inhibitors needed to hold a constant inhibitory tone. This is called tolerance, but it's not done here. Alcohol also blocks a chemical in the brain called glutamate that excites the brain. So in this area, the structures that receive glutamate are constructed here in the hopes that alcohol can't block everything, and that some of that glutamate can get through because the brain needs that excitation to function normally. Chronic alcoholic's brain is physically changed after years of misuse. So if JW hasn't had a drink for a few hours, electrical signals aren't insulated anymore. The increased numbers of glutamate receptors aren't blocked anymore. So every time is excited, resulting in status epilepticus. If he doesn't drink for just a short period of time, bad things happen to his brain. JW seizes for the 6th time, and nurses terminate him again. How can we be sure that JW has alcohol withdrawal? In between seizures, JW is confused and disoriented. When asked when his last drink was, he can't even slur out an answer because he can't even say his own name. If his only dietary intake is 50 beers every day for weeks, then he has protein malnutrition. He has vitamin deficiency, which are well known to cause neurologic issues in chronic alcoholics. Both of these could be an easy fix, though. If he needs vitamins, give him vitamins and make sure he doesn't stop receiving vitamins. Proteins can also be important here too, but more urgently, a blood test reveals that JW has chronic hyponatremia. Hypo, meaning low. Natrium, sodium, or more formally natrium, as shown by its symbol on the periodic table of elements. And emia, meaning presence in blood. Low sodium, presence in blood. Chronic, meaning that this has been developed on a time scale of several weeks now, pointing us back to the 50 beers that he drank every day that are sitting inside of his body. Hyponatremia can be the cause of his seizures too, which brings us to the next clue. 50 cans of beer is more than 4.5 gallons of liquid that's been going into JW's body daily. Interestingly enough, in the emergency room, barely any urine at all, meaning that there really hasn't been a net flow out of his body. His body is holding on to all of that liquid, and it's not just from one day's worth of beer. It's a staggered accumulation over several weeks. But let's look at the name hyponatremia. Low sodium presence in blood. Low sodium fits because in 1 can of beer, there's about only 10 milligrams of sodium. This is about as much sodium as in 1 cup of tap water. When natremia is measured, it's reported as the amount of sodium present divided by a volume of body water. So, low sodium presence in blood can be caused by a large volume of fluid, like 4.5 gallons of beer every day. But this also means that a low value can be caused by an actual low amount of sodium going into the body. Usually, hyponatremia is a problem with water because that's harder for the body to balance when something goes wrong. But if JW's only dietary intake for 6 weeks was 50 cans of beer daily, then this means that he has both a lot of water that he's holding onto, and he has very little sodium in his body because beer doesn't really have salt in it. But sodium isn't the only electrolyte that matters here. Beer also doesn't have potassium. Potassium also has an influence on body water through its impact on urine production, but JW also has hypokalemia, or low potassium. Both sodium and potassium electrolytes interplay with urea, which is a breakdown product of protein in the kidneys to help produce urine. And JW hasn't eaten any protein lately, although if he hasn't eaten for weeks, then his muscles should be wasting away in atrophy, and this could count as protein to make urine. But that isn't happening because beer has carbs. Carbohydrates, which in the body are broken down to sugar and water. Sugar induces the response of insulin, a hormone which prevents the breakdown of muscle, meaning no urea is available for urine production, along with hyponatremia and hypokalemia. These are all causes to hold on to all of that water because the kidneys need to exchange these. This beer potomania, poto from an ancient Greek word meaning to drink, mania, referring in this case to an excess, is a hypotonic hyponatremia that is causing all of JW's problems. Samples of little urine that he's made since presenting to the emergency room analyzed. Those solutes were found, meaning that his urine was maximally. But this should make sense. We've already established that he's got a lot of water inside of him. When someone is well hydrated, the urine is supposed to be dilute, but well hydrated in JW's case is an understatement. He should be bursting at the seams with fluid overload. He should be puffy and swollen everywhere. He should be peeing every couple of minutes. He isn't. He looks mostly normal.
So get down!
Where exactly are those cans of beer inside of his body? Well, body water is supposed to have 0.9% chloride. In the medical world, we call this isotonic. This means that for every 1 liter of water, there's 9 grams of sodium chloride, which is this table sum. 0.9% is thousands of times more sodium content than beer. Most of the body's water isn't actually in the blood. It's inside of the cells, and it exists as 0.9% sodium chloride. Sodium creates something called an osmotic gradient, which means that wherever sodium is, water will flow. In the small science experiment, I dissolve salt in this water and place it into a tube. I submerge the tube in a pool of water that has no salt dissolved in it, and you'll see that water flows into the tube. That water flows towards the sodium. So, if his body water has been polluted by hundreds of cans of beer, that means that the water inside of his cells is salty. His water flows towards where there's sodium, and JW's body water is flowing into his cells. This would mean that his organs, like his liver and his intestines, are starting to swell with water. That should be okay, though, because the abdomen is soft. But what about the brain? It's enclosed in a hard space. The skull has only room for a brain expansion of 8% before it starts to crush up against the sides of the skull and ooze out into the sutures or the gaps of the skull, pinching blood flow as parts of JW's brain start to necrose or quite literally die. This damage upon brain expansion is known as herniation and means permanent brain damage in JW's case, bringing us back to his seizures. If JW's hyponatremia is caused by a low daily intake of sodium, then simply just giving him salt is going to fix his problems. Interestingly enough, this is one of the 10 instances of hyponatremia where giving just salt is the fix. But the medical team can't give him tablets by mouth because he's disoriented. Giving him anything by mouth will cause him to choke. So he's given a small injection of 3% sodium chloride. Small injection because he doesn't need fluid. 3% sodium chloride being saltier than isotonic.
Tango down!
few hours, JW produces gallons of urine. His kidneys are able to exchange salts for water as it starts pouring out of his body. The seizures stop and he regains consciousness while medicines are given for his alcohol withdrawal. 3% sodium chloride injection 2 more times throughout the day to help with cerebral edema. As the days go by, JW's sodium levels normalize. He's in stable condition. He gets vitamins and proteins. He recovers and is well enough to discharge from the
Sentry gun deployed. Friendly XS-1 Goliath is landing. HQ located. Secure it.
His speech is slurred. Consult finds coordination deficits in JW. Intended positioning, often missing the target at very
online.
Enemies are capturing the HQ. Similarly, he had dysdiadochokinesia, meaning that his ability to perform rapid alternative movements possible neurodegeneration in JW that has worsened since his treatment was corrected. Didn't have those problems back then. He's not ready to be discharged. As the hours go by, he becomes weak in all 4 limbs. Nurses ask him to move his arms and his legs, but no response.
Stand by for the next
his muscles are floppy as his limbs become MRI of his brain reveals that JW is central.
HQ located. Secure it. Airstrike is ready.
The conductive sheath that covers nerve cells, and central pontine referring to the central pons of the brain, where it connects to the brainstem to deliver
friendly hunter-killer drone deployed
all throughout his body. If his hyponatremia has been corrected and JW has been sober many days now under medical supervision, then how could he just suddenly become paralyzed?
Enemies have captured the HQ.
Chronic hyponatremia. Well, chronic means that his body has had low sodium presence in blood on a time scale of at least 6 months because of that 50 beers only that he drank every day. When sodium presence in blood starts to decrease, water starts to flow into the cells pretty quickly. The brain does start to swell a bit in this initial phase, but the brain has an outlet called the cerebrospinal fluid, which flows into the spinal cord and cushions the brain inside of the skull. When hyponatremia is chronic, the swelling, even if it's slow, keeps happening, and the brain is forced to pump out organic salts, or carbon-containing salts, to further prevent the swelling. These organic salts are like sodium in that wherever they are, water will flow towards them too. So when they're out of the brain, water will follow them out. And because of this adaptation, this is why JW's brain doesn't immediately swell up after just weeks because he was slowly losing sodium day by day. Adaptations in the brain will adjust to the chronic hyponatremia. Sodium correction in a patient like JW is difficult because of all the metabolic derangements inside of his body, some of which are unmasked after initiation of therapy. His adapted brain started to shrink in the presence of sodium. Sodium and potassium rushed into his brain cells by design without the proper presence of those organic salts because those take time to get pumped back in to the brain cells. When there's a high sodium presence inside any cell, the DNA there starts to break. The cell thinks it's been mortally damaged and initiates programmed death because of those DNA breaks. This happens to all cells in the body. Defense mechanism against things like cancer, but in brain cells, the myelin sheath slumps off, parts of his brain cell to die again, leaving him paralyzed. Chronic hyponatremia is a completely different case from acute hyponatremia, where the brain hasn't adapted, meaning that the correction in the case of acute quick and aggressive in an effort to save someone.
Airstrike is ready.
Pure potomania.
Friendly airstrike incoming.
Electrolyte disturbances are just
enemy contact! Tango down!
Chronic alcoholics
Enemy down!
About 18% of patients who have pure potomania are at risk of osmotic demyelination, and hypokalemia and hypophosphatemia are increased risk factors for it, especially since these patients are almost always severely malnourished, just like JW. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourself and be well.
We've taken the lead.
Chinese COVID-19 vaccines are being used in dozens of countries. China has donated vaccines everywhere for those countries.
Globally used coronavirus vaccines, ranging between 50 to nearly 80%. Compare this with shots from Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and Russia's Sputnik V. The head of China's CDC in early April said the efficacy of some vaccines was not high, and this also included ones from his own country. So China is looking to bolster the protection rate, and one way is to mix and match different types of vaccines. And this idea isn't new.
We really welcome studies that would look at mix and match regimens.
Spain is also interested in combining vaccines, while researchers in the UK and Russia are already studying this. So as China joins the ranks of countries looking to mix and match, here's how it can be a key to overcoming multiple vaccination challenges at once. Most Chinese vaccines and other shots currently in use require 2 doses, creating an opportunity to mix and match. Some immunologists believe this could have a number of benefits, like boosting the immune response.
The theory is that if you train the immune system to recognize a virus in a slightly different way each time, then you might get a broader and more durable immune response.
And a more robust immune response is important since China has confirmed cases of new and more transmissible variants that were first identified in the UK and China. Mixing and matching for this reason has gotten support from at least one Chinese drug maker so far. Some immunologists also say that mixing and matching could ease the pressure from the vaccine supply chain. So for example, in countries that are rolling out Chinese vaccines along with other supplies, using 2 different shots could give doctors more options when patients come in for the second dose. But one of the most important reasons is when there are severe side effects from one of the vaccines.
If someone perhaps has a strange or severe allergic reaction to the first shot that they get, perhaps then by giving the second dose from a different vaccine.
The idea became particularly important after regulators started investigating rare blood clotting disorders linked to AstraZeneca's COVID vaccine. As of late March, 79 people in the UK have had severe blood clots out of the 20 million administered doses of AstraZeneca's vaccine. In France and Germany, health authorities are advising younger people who have received a first dose of AstraZeneca to get a second dose of a different vaccine. The drug maker said it's working with health regulators and studying the rare blood clotting events as possible causes. While these upsides could bring China and other countries closer to the
Hostile sentry gun in your AO.
health authorities say there's still a lot to learn about possible side effects and how it may affect the efficacy of the vaccines, especially when it comes to combining shots using different technologies.
Vaccines such as the Chinese vaccine by AstraZeneca and Johnson Johnson use the virus as the vector to get the genetic instructions into your body.
Whereas Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines use a new gene-based technology involving messenger RNA, where molecules carry genetic instructions.
So we're not too sure what happens when you mix these 2 technologies together.
Chinese health authorities have said people can receive different brands that use the same technology, but don't recommend mixing vaccines with different technology so far. But now, trials with the combination of 2 homegrown vaccines with different technologies are underway in China with more than 100 volunteers. The country is also working on its own mRNA vaccine and looking closely at approving Pfizer-BioNTech's shot, according to people familiar with the matter. This would pave the way for China to mix and match its more conventional vaccines with mRNA shots, similar to how researchers in the UK are studying the combination of AstraZeneca with Pfizer-BioNTech or Moderna. Those results are expected as early as May.
Immunologists, when you speak to them about this process, are pretty enthusiastic about it and optimistic that it's going to work. But that's what we want
Tango down!
to make sure that it isn't worse, to make it worse in your response than if you had 2 doses of the same vaccine.
Changing mag! Need backup!
Hey, what's up you guys? Today we have an important video, probably the most important one I'm ever gonna make. My most asked question, how did you do it? What was your mindset? How did you study for 12 hours a day for over a year? So yeah, let's just go ahead and talk motivation, discipline, drive, mindset, what causes a person to do what I did. So yeah, this is just what it was for me, how I did it, and kind of where I came from. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So what finally caused that 180 to the point where you're here now? And definitely the first step that I took was in physics. Our professor assigned us a TED Talk to watch, and it was about this thing called the growth mindset. And in the video they introduced two mindsets. The first one is the fixed mindset, and the second one is the growth mindset. And in the fixed mindset, it's kind of like, alright, here is my ceiling, and anything outside of that ceiling, I'm just not gonna do. I'm born with the limit, and I don't want to push myself. I'm not smart enough to do this assignment, and my boy Greg has got me. And that's definitely the mindset that I had up until that point in my life. It was the fixed mindset, you know? In high school, I did really well without studying. Why would I study when I can get A's just fine? But seeing college finally roll around and it was actually difficult, I didn't think that it was my studying that was a problem. It was just that I wasn't smart enough. And that was just kind of how I was raised, you know? That kid's a prodigy over there, so he's probably not very hardworking, and he just is born with all this talent. He can just do it out of the bat. I really thought that my mindset was the issue, and I knew that I had wanted to do well in university and in life in general. So the other mindset they introduced is the growth mindset. It's all about taking on new challenges and pushing yourself, breaking yourself down so that you can come back stronger. It's about resilience. It's about not waning in the face of aversion, you know? And it's definitely a paradigm shift to what I had before, and it's the very first step that I took was adopting and understanding the mindset in its entirety. So if you're not familiar with the growth mindset, I highly recommend you check it out. And yeah, that was the first step that I took. Alright, second topic that I want to talk about, which is drive, motivation, and the desire to succeed. So it's a pretty heavy topic. I don't know how quickly I can summarize my entire life's experience in these short few minutes or so. But motivation and drive. The key part that I want you to take out of this following segment is that I don't rely on motivation to do the things that I do. I think that if you just rely on motivation, you're just setting yourself up for failure, right? Because motivation is volatile. It's bound to change. You know what? It's raining outside. I don't feel like running. I'm just not going to go train for a marathon today. That's what motivation will get you. Nowhere. No, it might get you there for 2 weeks, but in the long run, no, motivation does not work at all. So I think when people ask me all the time, are you so motivated? Why can you do this every day? Like, what motivates you? The thing is, I'm not motivated to do any of this. I'm driven to do this, and that's a very big difference, alright? Drive versus motivation. The fundamental change between the two is that drive continues. Drive can get you from point A to point B without stopping, and it doesn't care about the rain outside when you're trying to go running. It doesn't care about how cold the water is when you go shower, you know? And that sounds pretty intense, but you gotta understand that motivation is volatile, you know? It's easy to be motivated to do hard things when you're comfortable in life, when everything is going just a-okay. But when you finally face challenges that actually push your buttons, motivation is not gonna work. And that's why I rely on my drive. So what is drive? I have a difficult time defining it in words, but my desire to succeed kind of does and fans the flame inside my heart to get me driven to do the things that I want to achieve. My goals, my aspirations, those are your drive. And if you rely on motivation to get them, it won't work. So how did you finally find your drive? I think I had met truly driven people in my life before. You know, I've met people who are brilliant but also driven. They wanted to get life's full experience. That's actually why I started this channel, was to share my drive online. So how did you get it? I don't want to say I read a book, but the book Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins was really important in understanding why I wanted to do the things that I did. I had this really massive chip on my shoulders since all in high school because I was always like the weird kid, you know, who wasn't socially successful, wasn't particularly liked by other people, and I just really remember like hating that feeling of people just looking down on me, you know? Like, I'm just another person, but I just remember being like, I'm just gonna be so driven that you won't forget me. Yeah, I just always had that chip in my shoulder because I was always and I just always wanted to do better. I also will say about the whole drive thing that it's not about showing off how driven you are or anything. It's not about doing it for other people. I would say that it was definitely for me. Like if you watch videos from when I was a little kid, in high school, middle school, you could see how unconfident I was, you know? I couldn't stand up straight. Anything that knocked me down, I would just kind of roll over and lay there. And understanding why I wanted to do better really took me a long time to figure out. And I think the book Can't Hurt Me explains the reason for his drive, and I could see a lot of myself in that person. And I also wanted to share that with you guys, so that's why I started this channel. I wouldn't say that I did it for other people, you know, I did it for me, because I wanted to become the best person that I could be. I got things I want in my life. I want to buy my mom a big house. I want to be a great father. I want to help people. And things like sitting there on Instagram all day, watching pointless YouTube videos all day, running away don't get me there. It took me 19 years to figure that out. I want to be present with my friends, and I really want to connect with people, and I just wasn't putting the two and two together. I didn't know what I really wanted until I just been pushed so hard with COVID and school, my family, no family, not having a family. I knew what I finally wanted.